Furina the Hydro Archon. I wanted a character that was as strong as or stronger than Yelan and Xingqiu, and man, they really delivered on that. Pros and cons, starting with the pros. She has, without a doubt, the laziest Hydro application in the entire game. Now, it's not going to be as strong as Xingqiu or Yelan when they're at their best, but considering it lasts 30 seconds and has a 20-second cooldown, it's pretty good. She is exceptionally useful in the overworld. Not only does she offer the best water walking in the entire game, which unfortunately only works for her when her elemental skill is active and not the whole party, but she can also turn into a healer at any point, meaning you don't need to run a healer in the overworld if you don't want to. And speaking of overworld, having both Fontainian alignments means that she is exceptional at solving puzzles. There are many Fontaine puzzles that you'll be able to cheese just by having her in your party and being able to solve it with her alone. She also has very high personal damage considering how easy her skill is to use, and nearly 100% of her damage, unless you're C6, comes from her elemental skill, making her very easy to build. And her universal damage percent buff that comes from her ultimate is not only higher percentage than Yelan's, but it affects the entire party, not just the on-field character. For you Prototype Amber fans, stocks are about to go up for that weapon. Party-wide healing is an extremely valuable asset to Furina, meaning that a weapon that offers that is a pretty good thing for her. Now for some cons. Furina's Hydro application is not always enough to contend with characters like Xingqiu and Yelan, as you might have expected, given that its duration is significantly longer and it's attached to an elemental skill. The easy answer is just she's not exactly always suitable for solo and is best paired with one of the previously mentioned characters, Yelan being an excellent teammate for her, but more about that later. Furina can really start to rely on a Fontainian DPS and how quickly they can lose and gain HP. This not only lessens the burden that your healer has to maximize her buff, but can also in some cases make it so you don't even need a party-wide healer. Now let's go over the basics, and while she has a wall of text on almost every ability of hers, it honestly is quite simple, and I'm going to make it as simple as I can. Starting with the attack talent. Now, the actual attacks themselves, they're nothing special technically. While they certainly have cool animations, without C6, these aren't getting infused by Furina themselves or supported in any way, but what does make this special is not only this is what her alignments are attached to, but also you can change her alignment by using her charge attack. Why would you want to do that exactly? Well, let's talk about her elemental skill now. Her skill does one of two things depending on your alignment. Numa heals around an exceptionally large, and I mean large, area around a stationary object. Uxia summons damaging minions that follow Furina and attack nearby targets. And to be absolutely clear, you can only have one of these active at any time, but most of the time, it's going to be the damage. As stated before, the heal is a very large circle around the stationary object. It heals the active characters only, it's relatively quick, and it's actually a pretty powerful heal. Pretty good for co-op, emergency situations, or just overworld exploration when you're not actually running a dedicated healer. Now for the good part, the summons. She has the Crab, a large AoE high damage dealer, the Octopus, a small AoE medium damage dealer, and the Seahorse, a single target no AoE fast damage dealer. Their attack speed is proportionate to the amount of damage each one deals, and they all attack simultaneously with their own independent attack timers, and they have no requirement to actually deal this damage and prioritize the target you are attacking. If your party members are above 50% health, each summon will take a small amount of percent HP from each of your party members to increase their damage. The damage bonus scales on the amount of party members that are currently being drained up to 4. And of course, all of her damage here is based on HP percent. This HP drain is essential to Furina's burst. Now what does her burst do? It's a buff that triggers Furina to start gaining fanfare stacks, and anytime anyone in your party is healed, damaged, or loses or gains HP in any way, she gets one fanfare stack for every 1% change in your party's HP. Without constellations, this can go up to 300 stacks at level 10, resulting in a 75% damage boost for your entire party. That is 50% higher than Yelan's buff, and it's affecting the entire party, not just the main field character. Not to mention the 30% healing received as well. That's pretty good. Her A1 passive is actually quite the useful little tool for Furina's kit. Any healing from a source other than Furina herself that overheals your on-field character will trigger a heal over time on a party member. Now, despite the wording of this passive saying on a party member, making it sound like it only affects one, in my testing, even one tick of overhealing caused the heal over time to affect my entire party. Her A4 passive is simply a buff to her skill's effectiveness. It buffs both the damage and healing it can do based on every 1,000 points of HP Furina has up to a cap of 40,000. Her exploration passive reduces the cooldown of the underwater animal abilities. Now this is, mostly fluff, but it's going to speed up some dailies by a fraction of amount, make farming underwater a little bit easier. It is a nice ability and is a lot better than a cooking passive. Talent priorities. This one couldn't be any simpler. Basic attack, you can ignore that entirely. The only innate Hydro infusion she has is all the way at C6, and that adds HP scaling to the attack. It has no natural HP scaling in it. Skill and burst, you're more or less going to be leveling up equally, but if you're using her as an average support, in most teams you're going to want to prioritize the burst, as that's what's giving your team a damage bonus. But the damage of her skill is nothing to scoff at, and it should be leveled at a high priority as well. These are both talents that are likely worth crowning. And of course, as an HP scaler, you will be wanting to take her to level 90. Artifact sets. As a character that is almost 100% skill damage unless you get the C6, she's gonna want the Golden Troop artifact set. That thing gives so much skill damage, and that is basically all of Furina's damage. And if you put Tenacity to the Millilith on her, I hope Furina puts you on trial, because that attack percent buff is doing nothing for Furina herself, and you're relegating her to a pure buffer and forsaking her own personal damage, which is quite high all things considered. That being said, if you're just looking to buff your main's damage as much as possible, of course she is an excellent user of Tenacity to the Millilith, but don't do it. I'm serious. That's just wrong. Aside from this, you can combine any number of the HP bonuses and Hydro damage percents, but these should only be placeholders until you can get your hands on a good Golden Troop set. But just wait. While this may be more related to team comps and not actually Furina's artifacts herself, there is a major bonus to Furina. She enables literally anyone in the game to be a potential user of the Hunter artifact set, an artifact set you're going to be getting some of while farming for Golden Troop artifact sets for Furina. This can give a monstrous 36% crit rate force set, as well as normal and charge attack damage bonus to any character in the game, as long as Furina is in the party and you have a healer to maintain the life drain. This is absolutely huge for any character who didn't have a 4-piece artifact set like Ningguang that didn't suit them very well. Combine that with the fact that Furina is a generic damage percent buffer that requires nothing to activate her elemental skill other than be around an enemy. That makes her such an insane character that opens up so many possibilities. This also works for the Vermilion Hereafter set in case you're not interested in crit rate or normal and charge attack damage and just want a huge attack percent bonus instead. However, this does not work for the set known as Dia's signature set, as this set requires you to take damage, not just lose HP. Artifact stats. Pretty standard stuff here. You want crit rate or crit damage circlet depending on what weapon you use for. Obviously some have huge crit rate, her signature has huge crit damage. You want to just balance your ratio as you always do. For Goblet, both HP percent and Hydro are going to be good choices given how much percent damage bonus her burst can give and how much potential HP her C2 can give. Much like the circlet, this can change depending on your own situation. Just know that both are going to be good no matter what. For Sands, of course, you're going to want HP percent or energy recharge depending on your own needs. In my own limited testing, any double Hydro comp had Furina chaining bursts with no problem. This was even without a weapon that offered energy benefits. I was using the Jade Cutter, and that is just pure damage. Then of course substats are going to follow a very much similar trend to any DPS. Crit stats are going to be your top priority, with HP percent following just behind that, or energy recharge depending on your own needs. As with any major support, you always want to be chaining her burst and always have it up, but given that it lasts 3 seconds longer than the cooldown, you have a little bit more leeway than the average support. Now for weapons. Okay, this is where a heated debate is going to surface once again. Event weapons. Festering Desire is going to be one of her best free-to-play options. Given that skill damage is her entire being in terms of damage output, Festering Desire is a natural fit. It also gives her a huge chunk of energy recharge, which will likely fix any problems she would have had. On top of that, it has the second lowest attack that a 4-star weapon can have, meaning not much value is wasted on a stat that she doesn't scale from. Now, many people are immediately going to think of the Wolf Fang weapon from the Battle Pass. Now, unfortunately, this thing does not work off-field, so it is not a good option for Furina. Furina's signature weapon is obviously going to be her best in slot. It is specifically designed exactly for her kit, but there are other limited 5-stars that do work with her. Primordial Jade Cutter is an amazing option. Even though it does give some attack in its passive, it is still the lowest attack bracket for a 5-star weapon and gives a massive crit rate boost, allowing you to use a crit damage circlet and go heavily for crit damage in your stats. It also offers a nice little bonus to HP. The Key of Caution to Soot will also be a pretty good option as a huge HP stat stick, but also as a small EM buff for your whole party. Now, the EM buff for Furina herself is probably not going to do a whole lot in most team comps. Now, there are also a ton of other options for Furina in various situations, but many of them have caveats or specific team comps that they would be okay in. I'm going to list them all on screen here, but I imagine most people will probably be going with Favonius Sword for energy recharge or Festering Desire if they have the event weapon. Okay, team comps. Here's the thing. If I list every team that she is potentially good in, I'll be here for like an hour because Furina is so generic, she benefits like everybody. So here's some rapid fire teams with the way she benefits them. Neuvillette. C4 Yelan could bring a lot of benefits to Neuvillette, but he couldn't activate her elemental burst. Furina gives many of the same benefits as C4 Yelan gave, except her elemental skill will do its own thing while he pressure washes everything into oblivion. She also benefits greatly from his own self-healing and self-damage. Noelle. Many people probably wouldn't have expected Noelle to be mentioned in this list, but I do think it's worth mentioning because she doesn't get teammates that benefit her very often. And units that benefit from Noelle's insane party healing are even more rare. It's so rare that I don't think we've ever really gotten one before. She'll maximize Furina's buff about as quickly as anyone possibly could, while also doing just what Noelle always wants to do, which is beat things with a huge Geo Claymore. Wriothesley teams. As a self-healer and self-damage dealer, he is a natural fit for Furina as well. Furina also has exceptional synergy with Yelan, which both together can go into a Wriothesley team. Yelan really doesn't have many units in the game that can actually increase her damage while she's off field. Furina not only gives a more potent damage buff than Yelan can give to a single target, but she gives it to the entire party, including Yelan herself. Yelan was already one of the most powerful units in the entire game, and she is getting even better with Furina's addition. As for specific synergies, Furina obviously loves healers, and the good news for you Baizhu owners is he is going to see a huge value increase given that he is probably the best party healer that requires the least amount of field time, meaning he's going to be able to maximize Furina's buff very easily. Combine that with the fact that she's a Hydro and he's a Dendro, and that is the core of every OP Dendro team, they are a pretty good fit together. And then of course, as we get more Fontainian DPS that do self-damage and self-healing, they are going to just have continued value with Furina. She is an insane unit. Honestly, I can't think of any accounts that I would recommend people not get her, but of course, if you're saving for someone else, she is an Archon, she will be around more often, and I would recommend pulling her eventually. That is all I have for now. I am very excited about Furina. Honestly, I could talk about her for an hour of all the team comps and possibilities as she opens up, but I want to keep this brief and simple to digest for people. So thank you for watching. I hope you have good luck pulling for Furina if you're going to, because I imagine that's going to be a lot of you. Thank you to my members, my patrons for supporting me as always, and I'll see you in the next one.
Attaboy!